Reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network.
First of all, I'm going to start talking about Blade and Soul, and I know that I've mentioned this quite a few times in the last few weeks as I've been going through the different aspects of the game and what I could do in the game and some of the concerns that I have. So I'm going to talk a little bit in general about the game itself so that people who are maybe considering the game can take a look at it and see whether or not it's worth it for them, some of the concerns that I had, and then we'll talk about some other stuff. So the first thing is, this is most of all a really well-made game. I ran into very few bugs. The world was beautiful. The classes seemed very balanced between them, in my gameplay experience at least. And I really enjoyed playing the Summoner class, which was my favorite one, even though it was a little weird with having a little cat follow me around. You know, all these games that you summon something, you have these big angry demons or beasts, or... No, I had a little kitty cat. I had a bow. Pretty little bow. Yeah. And the Summoner class, though, was really fun. It was a ranged DPS class. The pet was important, but not the only thing that I did. And going through the world and going through the story quests, I really enjoyed the story. Yes, it's cliche. It's kind of old-fashioned. It's very much inspired by Japanese movies in its sort of... not Japanese, I'm sorry, Chinese movies in their very stereotypical nature, in that there's a big bad guy and the dialogue is kind of corny and there's poses in the actions. It's just very much what you'd see in a stereotypical dubbed Chinese movie, and it's really well done. The story did catch me. I did want to know what was going on, and I did want to find out what the next step was going to be. It did have a few parts, though, where I ended up having to stop my wonderful journey through the story quests and end up, unfortunately, having to grind for a while to get up to the level where I needed to be for that particular story quest. And it wasn't always that I ran out of quests to do. Sometimes it was that I was a little bit rushed and I maybe ignored a few side quests to get through the story quests, but there were these walls where I had to stop, not because of the difficulty, but because I simply wasn't able to take the next quest because I wasn't a high enough level. And that I found quite disconcerting. What also kind of bugged me, as I tend to do when I'm playing a game, I watch a lot more Twitch streams of other people playing it. It seemed like the majority of the players were grinding their way through the game rather than playing their way through the game. So it's definitely a very grind happy game. So if you like to go through, and we had this discussion a while back, what is grind? And for me, it's basically repetitive tasks. If you have to go in and either do the same dungeon again and again or kill the same area of monsters again and again and again, then you're grinding. You're no longer playing through the game. And that kind of bugged me just a little bit. And I didn't really like that. But it wasn't to the point where I hated the game, and it didn't really hit until I got only about 15 levels from the max level in the game that it really started to hit me. Before that, it was not really all that bad, and I quite enjoyed the experience and would happily go through with another character. The other thing I wanted to mention as well is that they do have a few content updates out already. Even though the game's only been out for just over a month, they've got a new class out, they've got some new content out, so they're really updating the game, at least at this early part of its life in North America, quite well. So it's really quite enjoyable to play through. The combat is fluid, it's fast, traveling around is a lot of fun. You have this little sort of glide power. You don't have mounts, but you have this flying power that you can use, and one of my favorite things to do is start in a zone at the top part and kind of glide through a zone and try and do like those wingsuits videos and try and just clip an area, not quite land, and then go down further. It was actually really, really enjoyable, and I liked that part of it a lot. There's also Dragon Striding, I think it's called, where you can go over some longer distances, which is just basically a cutscene. Crafting system is really, it's kind of this mix between a whole bunch of other games in that you don't actually have to do a lot in the game itself. You send out other people to do stuff for you. You join a guild, you can join 2 guilds, and you can send out the people to go out and do stuff. The way it works, though, is you have to, if say I want to mine the specific type of ore, I have to go out into the world, find that ore at least once, and then I can send anybody else out to go and mine it from my little guild that I'm in, this crafting guild that I'm in. It does cost more to craft outside of town than in, but you can do it from anywhere. The last part that I wanted to mention, two last parts. Number one, the dungeon queue. It pulls you right out of the game unless you queue at the entrance of the dungeon. But they've actually got a lobby for queuing for dungeons, and they've got a lobby for queuing for PvP, which is outside of the game. Similar to a loading screen, more so than what Guild Wars 2 does. Whereas, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so what's the lobby like? What can you actually do in that lobby?
Nothing. It's a load. It's a character select screen.
Oh,
and then you can talk to people, and then you can pop into a dungeon. Now, the nice thing about the dungeon queue is that it is you can go completely cross server with all of the different servers. I never had more than a 10-second queue. I realize this is the first month and a bit of the game, but even later in that time frame, I didn't have more than a 10 or 15 second queue, and I was in a dungeon. It was wonderful, and it teleported you there, and you even had a little NPC in this sort of central area. It kind of ports you to a central area once your dungeon queue pops. Not actually the dungeon. You have a NPC that sells and buys stuff, and an NPC that gives you whatever daily quests you can get for that dungeon, and then in you go. So it's very useful. A lot of fun to go through that, because I love dungeons, and that was one of my favorite parts of the games. The dungeons were really well built. Bosses were, at the beginning, easy as they should be, and got more challenging as you went through. And overall, just a really good experience. PvP, same thing. They've got a whole bunch of different types of PvP. Arena, 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, and I think they had a bigger group as well, so you can get your PvP kick out of that. I didn't see any battlegrounds type PvP. It was all arena style PvP.
Okay.
And you can do world PvP by putting on different factions outfits. So that there is some world PvP, and you can change your faction just by putting on a different outfit, and then you gain rep for that faction. So
I feel like there's some kind of social commentary baked into that.
The last thing that I want to mention, sort of a bit more of a downer, is the costuming system for both the male and females is incredibly gratuitous in the amount of skin that it shows and the amount of wiggle that it shows in certain body parts as well, to an uncomfortable level. It was, I think, Bill, you weren't really comfortable with that either, were you?
Well, I've talked about it because I gave Blade and Soul a try. I didn't give it the full review treatment or anything like that, but that it comes down to is it a game that I'd be embarrassed? Like that. Not even just is it safe to have in front of my kids, because obviously there's a bunch of games that I'd play that I wouldn't necessarily play with my children or in front of my children or anything like that. But to be embarrassed to have the game up in front of my children, that's kind of a trigger for me. That basically it's like that's my nope. I'm out.
Yeah.
Have a nice life game.
Yeah. So there is that aspect to it. Some of you will be offended by it. Some of you will be excited by it. That is a consideration to make as you go into the game. As a free-to-play game, though, with a very well-filled-out cosmetics, mostly store, there's some XP boosts. The store, I thought, was fantastic. It was not buy-to-play in any way whatsoever. And overall, just a really fantastic game that I really think anyone should try out. If you're into the aesthetics of it, if you are into a little bit more of a grind, or not into, if you are tolerant of a bit more of a grind, then the gameplay parts of it are really fun. The combat is good, dungeons are good, crafting is good, and well worth a try. I will be leaving this installed on my computer. I'll be going back into it semi-regularly, but I don't think that it caught me in a way that this is going to become my main game. I just I have I didn't feel super excited to play it. It was good while I was playing it, but like some other games, like Marvel Heroes, like Neverwinter, it's one of those games where, you know what, once I'm done playing, I had a really great time. It was fantastic, but I don't really think about it until I go back. So there you go. There's my thoughts on Blade and Soul. You can go and check that out for yourself if you were intrigued by what I had to say about it. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. Don't forget to check out all the other podcasts at MMOReporter.com or by clicking on any of the links here. And please check out our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMOReporter. Thanks, everyone, and see you in game.